Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to look at static and class methods. And this is a reasonably advanced topic. So if you have any questions at any point, just let me know. Let's say we wanted to extend our student so we could go to school, for example. And here we would say something like print, I'm going to format self.school, right? I'm going to school, and in this case it'll be MIT. Okay, so we can do that. We can say something like Anna.go to school, and when we run this code, we should get I'm going to MIT, and we do. If we wanted to make this a bit more generic, we may say something like I'm going to school if we, for example, didn't really care about which school we're going to. Just I'm going to school, I'm busy or something like that. If we do this, and this is just to explain this concept of static and class methods really, if we wanted to do this, would you agree that we are not using self inside the method? Self is being passed as a parameter, but we are not using self. And then, would you agree that it doesn't matter which object, if it's Anna or if it's another student object? It doesn't matter which student object is calling this method, because in all cases, no matter who is calling it, it's always going to do the same thing, because it doesn't use self, and therefore, even if the school is different for a particular object, it's always going to print, I'm going to school. And I'll do something like this. Just to make it a bit clearer, if Anna calls go to school, it'll print I'm going to school, and if Rolf calls go to school, it'll print I'm going to school. And it is independent of the object's properties. We are not using self at all. We're not saying I'm going to Oxford or I'm going to MIT. All we're saying is I'm going to school. Therefore, it doesn't matter who calls it, if Anna or Rolf. In both cases, it's going to print out the same. It's going to execute the same code. So if you agree with that, then there is a change that we can do where we can remove the self. We can't do that lightly though, sadly. If we run this code now, we get an error. Because we say Anna.go to school, and then it says type error. Go to school takes 0 positional arguments, but 1 was given. We gave it 1 argument. It's saying that we gave go to school an argument. But where's that argument? We haven't really given it anything inside the brackets. And you'd be correct. However, whenever we say object.method, self always gets passed in as the object. So essentially, this is the same thing as doing go to school with the object as a first parameter. That's why we need the self, and we cannot remove the self. However, we can tell Python that we don't need the self, and if we do that, then we don't have to pass it in anymore. And the way we do that is by, in front of the method, doing this. Now, instead of self, we need CLS. So what is CLS, you say? When we run this Anna.go to school, what we pass in as the first parameter is Anna, the object. And then we can do things like self.school, for example. When we call something a class method by putting ampersand sign class method in front, what we pass is not the object, but the class student. So inside the body, we can see that CLS is student. Let's run this. What we get is I'm going to school as we would expect, and then I'm a class main.student. The main is just because the file that we run is always called main. So we're inside the main file essentially, and the class is student. So this essentially says I'm a student. So the class is what we've passed in. We've passed in student, we've passed in this thing here. In some cases, that is useful. In other cases, it is not useful. And if it isn't useful, then you can, instead of class method, you can do static method. And then you don't pass anything in. And then this is fine. I'm just going to school like that. More than that, you no longer have to do Anna.goToSchool or Rolf.goToSchool. Now you can do student.goToSchool. It no longer matters who is calling it, because we're running the same code if Anna calls it or if Rolf calls it. So we might as well just call it with the class itself. Notice that if you make this a class method, and this gets CLS, you can do the same thing. You can still call it as student.goToSchool. The only moment where you need to call it as an object is if it doesn't have a decorator, and here you have self. Then you need to call it Anna.goToSchool. But if you make this a static method, then you don't need anything here, and you can call it like so. So this was a quick introduction to what class method and static method are, and they are just differences in what we pass the methods. So in this case, the goToSchool method, we didn't need self, so we can make it static, and that means that all objects, Anna and Rolf and any other objects, all objects share the same method essentially. So no matter who calls it, it always prints the same thing out. So that's it for this video. In the next one, we're going to look at inheritance in object-oriented programming, which is extremely important in large and complex systems. I'll see you there.